So I went to Ikea today, like any good Swede should be doing on a Sunday, and I want to share something that always interests me when I go to an Ikea, and something that kind of especially interested me when I went there today. And I haven't looked into this or anything, so I don't know. Maybe there is an answer out there to find in the open, and if you know what that answer is, then please let me know in the comments. Maybe you've worked at an Ikea and can tell me. Yeah, just leave it down below if you do. But okay, so when you walk around the parts of Ikea with all of the model rooms where they've kind of set it up with furniture to make it look as if someone's living there, there's always these things there that aren't like Ikea things. And for some reason, those things always fascinated me or piqued my interest somehow. Like, how do they get these? Is it just completely random? Some intern that goes shopping at various thrift stores? Or is there like a centralized warehouse where Ikea just has a bunch of random used shit that they ship out in boxes to their different locations whenever they need some stuff? I often think about this also when I visit like a coffee shop, something like that, where they usually have these old books on these really high shelves, because it's not meant for reading. They're just there as decoration, and sometimes they're fake books, but a lot of the time I look at the spines of them and I can tell that they are actual books up there. But the difference between that and Ikea is that they only have to do that once. They only have to buy them once, right? They can get the furniture, their wall clocks, whatever decorations they want to have there, and then they make sure to like place a bid on eBay or go to some thrift store and just pick up a box of old books. But for Ikea, it's like so much, and also it's a franchise. And my experience with franchises, at least in Sweden, is that nothing is really just up to the whims of whoever is in charge of that location that particular day. There are style guides and rules, regulations about what they can display, how and where. And if you're completely unaware of what I'm even talking about, the most obvious examples are, of course, the books. There's a bunch of books in most of the rooms. Sometimes they have several copies of the same one, and sometimes it's completely random stuff. But another obvious one are clothes. There's dresses, shoes, sweaters, all kinds of stuff, and it's just random. It's any brand. It's all kinds of brands. And then there are, of course, the fake displays and stuff like this fake VR headset and this empty PC case, which, to be fair, I do find kind of interesting, because it usually lacks any kind of branding or brand identification, but I do reckon that it all comes from the same place, that being some factory somewhere that does display shit or makes the stuff before brands put their brand on it, whatever, you know. But the most fascinating shit to me is the stuff that makes me just go like, where did they find this? Which brings me to something I found today. So in one of the rooms that had this sort of like man cave, nerd collector sort of vibe going, in one of the shelves I saw this. It's a bunch of VHS tapes. And like, first of all, VHS tapes aren't even made anymore. But up until a few years ago, at least here in Sweden, you could still find them new old stock in some stores, but you can't anymore. And yes, I know that you could get your hands on them today still, like I've done it, but what really got me was this. So there's a handful of actual releases here. But then there's just a bunch of these same branded ones, right? Blank tape. So they must have gotten a box of blanks from somewhere. And I'm just really curious where they got that. But then I was even more confused by seeing that some of these are so obviously used. Like, look at the cover of this one. The edges are all obviously torn and like fucky from being in someone's possession. And sure enough, I opened the case up and this tape is right in the middle of playback. This was stopped in the middle of something. This wasn't rewound to the beginning. This is a tape that someone used at some point, so there's probably something on this tape, and I really want to know what that is. Is it some movie recorded off of TV with a bunch of like commercials? When was that recorded and where? I've bought used VHS tapes in Sweden before. It's not super common these days, so they would really have to go out of their way to get these. That is, if they're from inside of Sweden. But they might not be. There might be like Taiwanese TV commercials on these, or like home movies. Like I don't know. It's really interesting to me, these VHSs in particular, but also this concept in general, that they have random shit in their fake rooms Whose stuff is this? What's their story? How did it get here? I didn't film much when I was in this particular Ikea today, so you've probably been watching a bunch of repeated random footage in slow motion, but there's so much of it. Like next time you're at an Ikea, if you look for it, you'll see a lot of it, and that's it. That's all. That's everything. Thank you.